I thought my life would become perfect the moment I found it, but reality slapped me right in the face. Chapter 10 in his eyes Anilsky. Oh. I looked up at the plain white sea as my mind began to wander. Tomorrow was my 18th birthday, and my wolf Max has been jumping around the whole week. He was overwhelmed with excitement and anticipation. Max scowled at wait to find our mate, and I have to admit I was just as excited. I smiled to myself when I started imagining what she would be like. Would she be shy and reserved, yet overly possessive? Or would she be loud and annoying, but in a cute way? Would she have fiery red hair, long golden locks, or beautiful, long brown waves? Was she going to be adorably short, or tall enough for me to kiss her comfortably and bury my face into her neck? And her eyes, the windows to her soul, would they be a dark, chocolatey brown, a deep blue, or a beautiful emerald green? No matter what she was like, I was going to love her and cherish her. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilban, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. I'm not against that, or anything. Whoever it is, I'm going to love them no matter what. The thought of having my mate in my arms made my heart begin to race. I just cowled and wait anymore. My happiness and excitement was spilling over, making it hard to contain myself. My door suddenly flew open and Lucas rushed in, followed by Jeremy, who tackled him to the ground. I sat up and watched as these two idiots had a playful fight. AGH dude, you're strangling me, Lucas yelled from under Jeremy. With a smirk, Jeremy said, you know, that's not the only way I can strand, EWW. You're gross. I broke in and hurled a pillow his way. He easily dodged it and grinned at me. WWW, it's okay to be jealous. There's enough of me to go around. He teased with a flirtatious wink. He sat next to me on the bed and swung his arms around my neck, pulling me close to him. I let out a sigh and kicked him off of me. He landed on the floor next to Lucas. Save that for your mate, I said while crossing my arms. Jeremy rolled over so he was laying on his stomach and rested his face on his hands. He grinned and said, so, tomorrow's your birthday. You know what that means. You'll find your mate soon, Lucas answered excitedly. A wide grin spread across my face. I already knew that all too well, since it's all I've been thinking about lately, but being reminded just made me happy all over again. While I was in my own world, swimming in my own little pool of happiness, Jeremy interrupted. Oh, but you have to wait 2 more weeks to be able to meet her. My smile immediately faded and turned into a frown. What, why? I whined, sounding like a little brat. Tomorrow we're having an event for you here at the Pack House since it's your birthday, and the rest of the time we'll be busy dealing with the rogues that killed 2 of our warriors, Jeremy explained. I let out an angry sigh. It was going to be a long 2 weeks. Haven't I already been waiting long enough? Young Alpha, the meeting will start soon. We need to discuss the plan with neighboring packs. Harrison, the current beta, and Lucas's dad. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilban, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. We all looked at each other, then stood up. Being the Alpha, in Delta, we all got up to attend the meeting. We all grew up together, so we know each other all too well. We didn't exactly get along at first, and we still have our arguments every now and then, but we've become inseparable, even with Lucas, who wouldn't open up or even talk at first. Archie is really shy and reserved, despite being the beta. When we arrived, our fathers were already there, waiting for us. We each took our seats in our usual chairs and prepared for the long meeting ahead of us. I entered the school with a racing heart and a wolf that wouldn't calm down. In our 2 weeks of absence, we managed to scare away the rogues, although we don't know for how long. We're certain they'll be back sometime in the near future, and when they do come back we'll be ready to fight. But right now, I was walking with Jeremy and Lucas into Westwood High School 2 weeks after my birthday. Those 2 weeks were restless ones, but now that I was here, the only emotions I could feel were excitement and anticipation. I frowned when we entered the school, and the amazing scent of my mate still hadn't triggered my senses. I let out a sigh, and that's when it hit me. Grinning ear to ear, I faced Jeremy and Lucas. I found her. Smiles formed on both of their faces. Jeremy lightly pushed me forward and said, "Well, then go get her." My heart began pounding. Everything around me blurred and the world fell into complete silence. The only thing I could hear was the quick beating of my heart. Her scent was so strong. It was driving me insane. She had the irresistible sweet smell of vanilla that came with a strong wave of nostalgia. Her pleasant smell reminded me of my childhood days, when everything was easy. I followed her scent around this maze of a school with anticipation. I just wanted to find her already and hold her in my arms. Find her and mark her so everyone knows she's ours. I smiled at how straightforward Max was being. Of course I wanted to do that, but I would have to talk with her first. "Don't you think we should wait a bit before we do that?" "I guess you're right," Max admitted. I came to a sudden stop when I saw the back of a girl with long, light brown hair. When my eyes fell upon her, my heart stopped for a second before beating uncontrollably. "That's her. To my agent extraordinaire, Marilyn Noble. Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm." "That's her. Daniel. That's our mate. Go up to her and claim her." My wolf was so excited. I had only seen her back and already felt strong feelings for her. I was about to run to her, pin her to the lockers, and kiss her and hug her. But she turned to her right to face someone with a bright smile that sent my heart racing, despite it not being aimed at me. Now I could see her face. She had beautiful, emerald green eyes that had me mesmerized, a perfect nose, and lips that just looked so kissable. I immediately recognized her. She's in some of the same classes as me, and we've known each other for 2 years, although we haven't talked before. My mate is Lauren Adiel Arrington, which is kind of strange since her middle name is Danielle and my name is Daniel. That's gonna cause some confusion. She began talking to her friend, not even glancing my direction. I frowned when she didn't acknowledge my existence. Can't she sense me? Her mate. She's definitely a werewolf. So why hasn't she noticed me? Just when I was about to walk up to her for the second time, she opened her locker and my eyes fell upon a cowl and a hung up on the inside. With my enhanced werewolf vision, I was able to see a day marked for 2.5 months that read birthday. What? That's not possible. If she's not 18 yet, how could I have found out she was my mate? It just doesn't make sense. She pulled out a textbook from her locker and began patting her friend's head with her free hand, which seemed to anger her friend. I focused my attention on her friend. I've seen her around, but I can't remember her name. She was short, but seemed aggressive. All I know about her is that she is the slowest runner in gym class. I refocused on my mate, who was undeniably the most beautiful girl I'd ever laid my eyes on. She was glowing, beauty radiating off her. I so desperately wanted to go up to her and kiss her, in front of her friend and in front of everyone around us. It didn't matter who saw. I just wanted her to be mine. However, I knew that was not the best idea. If I were to do that, she'd probably slap the shit out of me. It'd be a complete perverted stranger who suddenly went up to her and stuck his tongue in her mouth. Even if I did tell her I was her mate, she'd think I was straight up crazy. She probably doesn't feel our bond, and she'd be weirded out if I told her we were mates without having any proof that I was. My heart dropped when she turned to me, her eyes meeting mine. Their deep green color sent my heart racing. My body froze and my feet became rooted to the ground. My mind went blank as I got lost in her beautiful eyes. A rush of heat ran through my body as her gaze remained on me, making me feel a bit self-conscious. When she turned back to her friend, I felt like I could finally breathe again, but I still wanted her to look at me again. I watched as my mate closed her locker, ready to go to her next class. To my wolf's dismay, I made my resolve. It was difficult, but I decided to stay away from her for now. She didn't know she was my mate, and I would wait until she did to approach her. I didn't want to scare her away before we even got a chance to start anything. You'll let things play out naturally for her, even though it'll be hard on Max and I. But if it's for my mate, I'll do anything. I only have eyes for her, and am willing to wait for her as long as I need to. Chapter 11 kidnapped. My head bobbed up and down as Daniel took quick steps through the halls. Put me down. Don't make me blow my rape whistle, I yelled as I punched his back. You're what now? Sounding less irritated than before. You heard me. I saw a faint smile play on his lips before quickly turning back to a frown. He continued walking, ignoring my protesting. I cursed under my breath. Desperate times call for desperate measures. I reached up and pulled his hair in an attempt to make him put me down. But instead, he let out a small moan, causing my head to snap in his direction. Seriously, I yelled as I smacked his head. He defended. Hey, it's not my fault. Hair pulling is sexual and you know it. I shook my head at him and ended my futile attempts at escaping his hold. I let out a sigh and muttered, why don't you just leave me alone? To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilben, heartfelt thanks for your unfading patience, enthusiasm. He immediately stopped walking, and I instantly regretted what I just said. I didn't mean for it to come out like that. Before I could react, he threw me off his shoulders and I barely landed on my feet. I stumbled backwards, but managed to stay up. I held my breath when he trapped me against the wall, both hands on either side of my head. He leaned in close, causing my heart to pound wildly in my chest. I could see his striking features up close. His deep blue eyes, his perfect nose, and his irresistible lips that naturally curved into a slight smile, now downturned into a deep frown. Why won't you accept me as your mate? He yelled, pain etched in his voice. Alex howled in pain at her mate's suffering. She wanted nothing more than to claim him as ours and snuggle with him. I felt a pang of guilt knowing I was causing her so much suffering. I've waited long enough already. I can't take much more of this. He yelled, his voice breaking at the end. His head dropped onto my shoulder, and he snuggled against my neck. His hot breath against my bare skin caused my body to shiver. He took in a deep breath and muttered, I need you. Those words echoed in my head, playing over and over again. They made me feel overwhelmed with excitement and satisfaction. He placed a gentle kiss on my neck, causing my eyes to flutter shut. Waves of heat spread throughout my body, but before I would let myself succumb to the pleasure, I pushed him away with all my force. He stumbled backwards and I took the chance to escape. But before I could even run to steps, he placed an arm around my stomach and pulled me back. You're not getting away that easily. I yelped as I was tossed over his shoulder once again, this time more rough than the first. He continued carrying me over his shoulder as I continued to resist. Everything was upside down, and it was beginning to give me a headache. I realized we were now outside when the bright sun blinded me for a few seconds. Next thing I knew, everything flipped around and I was thrown into the back seat of a grey convertible, similar to the one the Roses had recently given me. Daniel entered after I was gently placed inside. He pulled me onto his lap, and when I tried to get off, he tightly gripped my waist, preventing me from moving. I let out an annoyed growl, even though this position felt so natural, but he didn't seem to mind. In the driver's seat was Jeremy, who turned to face us and winked at me. Lucas, who was in the passenger's seat, also turned his body to face us and gave me a soft smile. Jeremy began ranting. Hey, Lauren, we've been expecting you. Oh, and sorry about the other day. I suddenly came up to you all angry, but it's 'cause I was worried about my buddy. I don't want him getting hurt. You know. Lucas nodded silently. Just take us home. Jerry, Daniel said irritated lie. Jeremy burst out. Hey, don't call me Jerry in front of the lady. I don't want my reputation getting ruined. Just do it. Jerry, Daniel repeated, losing his patience. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Phew, You don't have to be so snappy, Jerry muttered, turning around and starting the car. The whole trip, we all rode in awkward silence. I looked down, trying to remain calm, but having Daniel so close wasn't helping. He was basically breathing down my neck, and it was making me really nervous and self-conscious. It wasn't helping that my wolf was over the moon with excitement. Alex just couldn't contain herself. Her emotions mixed with mine, and I became more confused. I felt excited and had butterflies in my stomach, thanks to my wolf. But at the same time, I felt a bit worried and concerned. Why were they taking me? And where were they taking me? Is this considered kidnapping? Will I be fed? The car came to a stop after they took an inconspicuous route to the forest. It was only a 5-minute drive through the forest before a big, modern house came into view, with smaller buildings nearby, most of which appeared to be houses. I assumed the biggest house, which was at the center of everything, to be the pack house, and the large clearing everything lay on along with some forest to be Silver Coat Pack territory. Jeremy parked right outside the pack house, turning off the car and stepping out. Lucas opened his door and got out as well, while Daniel opened the door and got out, quickly reaching towards me and helping me out. He kept me close, making me feel safe and protected. I was still a bit irritated. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeline Nobel, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. I was taken here without my consent, and I had no clue why I was here. Daniel ran his hand down my back, resting it on the small of my back. The movement caused me to stiffen as his touch left a tingly sensation on my skin. Jeremy and Lucas began heading inside, and Daniel followed, using his hand to guide me inside. Wait, where are we going? But got no reply from anyone. I continued with my questions. This is the pack house. Why are we here? Still, no response. I glowered at them and muttered a few insults. Because of my wolf Alex, I was complying with what my mate wanted to do. For all I know, he could have been leading me to my death. We entered through the glass door and were immediately greeted by people whom I didn't know. When they saw us, they stood up straight and bowed as a sign of respect. My head quickly turned to face Daniel, surprise written all over my face. No way. You're either. I began, but trailed off. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeline Nobel, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Daniel is the alpha of the pack. I immediately heard laughter coming from beside us, and I looked to see Jeremy laughing, after he was able to stop, with a smile. No, Daniel's not the alpha. I am. At his revelation, my eyes went wide. That explained why I couldn't look him in the eyes a while back, when he was asking me a question I didn't know the answer to. He also has an aura that radiates power and confidence. I mentally kicked myself for not realizing it earlier. He continued, Lucas here is my beta, and Daniel is my delta, third in command. I was surprised at the mention of my mate's role, so he was someone important in the pack. I simply looked at Daniel, unable to say anything. He looked back at me and smiled slightly. Although we're not technically in those roles yet, until after I find my mate and turn 18, Jeremy declared. How did you not know? Aren't you part of the pack? Lucas asked quietly, rubbing the back of his neck. I flinched when he asked that question. Obviously, it was because my uncle excluded me from the pack. But I couldn't tell them about that or how he has been treating me. Especially not with Daniel here. Oh well, I live in town with the humans, not here with the rest of the pack. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeline Nobel, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Not knowing what else to say. Yeah, but a few other wolves live in town too and may integrate into the pack just fine. Jeremy responded, eyeing me suspiciously. Well, it's kind of complicated. Can't we just leave it at that? To my agent extraordinaire, Madeline Nobel, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Looking down and playing with my fingers, Jeremy opened his mouth to speak, but Daniel spoke first. "In taking her to my room, we have a lot to talk about." Jeremy grinned and with a wink said, "Don't be too loud. Nobody here wants to hear your moans." Daniel glared at him before abruptly picking me bridal style. I tried to wiggle my way out of his hold, but he held me tightly and began walking, taking me upstairs. After walking past many doors, we arrived at a large section that had only one wooden door. He opened it and walked inside, closing the door behind us. I quickly examined the room. It was very spacious, with only a bed in the main area, a resting area beyond it, a bathroom to the left, and a small office to the right. It mostly had grey and white colours, giving the place a modern look. He put me down near the bed, and I remembered I was supposed to be angry at him. "Why did you bring me here against my will?" "Because you've been ignoring me," he shouted back. I yelled, "No, I've been avoiding you. There's a difference. Why? Am I not good enough for you?" He yelled, a hint of pain in his voice. I looked away, wanting to say that's not it, but it just wouldn't come out. "I've been waiting a long time to be with you. Why couldn't you have made this easier?" Daniel says sadly. I take a deep breath, calming myself down, confused by what he said. "What do you mean you've been waiting a long time?" He sighs and slumps down onto the floor, resting his back against the bed. He reaches out his hand to me, and I warily extend mine. His hand touches mine, causing shivers to run down my spine. "Damn mate bond." He carefully pulls me down so I'm sitting next to him, both of us with our backs against his bed. We're close, but not so close I can't even think. "I found out you were my mate before you turned 18. I don't know if you noticed or not, but a while back I was absent for 2 weeks. That was due to my 18th birthday and some packed business we had to take care of." I nod. "Yeah, I remember." He looks at me and cocks his head to the side. "I didn't know you paid so much attention to me." "Don't let it get to your head. It was around then that I started to notice you more," I replied, slightly embarrassed. He smiled but continued explaining. "When I came back, I found out you were my mate. I also realized that you weren't 18 yet, so you couldn't feel our bond. I decided not to say anything since I wanted you to experience one of the most important days of your life normally, without having to worry about anything else. I didn't want to drag you into this mess." I felt guilty, knowing how I had acted after he endured so much. It must have been hard on him, having to go through all that on his own. He carried everything on his shoulders so I wouldn't have to. He was thinking of me, while I was only acting selfishly. In a small voice, "To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilban, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. I caused you so much trouble." He smiled softly and tucked a loose strand of hair behind my ear. "I'm sorry for being so rough with you and forcing you to come here. I know that was wrong, but I was desperate and didn't know what else to do. I promise I'm not normally like this. Finally having you here with me and being able to talk to you is already enough to make me happy. It's true that I was angry that he brought me here forcefully, but I was also kind of happy, simply being with him, even for a short while, was making me and my wolf happy. Alex was no longer angry at me. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilban, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm." There was still something floating around in my mind that was bothering me. "To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilban, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm." I didn't think it was true anymore, but I had to confirm it to be sure. "You don't like Carly, right?" He looked at me, confused, and replied, "They're your friend." "No, why would you think that?" I quickly looked away and down at my lap. This whole time I thought I should back off and let my mate and my best friend be happy together. But he didn't like her as I had thought. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw him shake his head. He gently cupped my face with his big hands and looked into my eyes. He softly said, "Lauren, I've been dreaming of the day I found my mate since I was a little kid. There's no way I would ever even think of being with anyone who was my soulmate. I don't want anyone but you." His words were so sincere and wholehearted. I felt my eyes begin to tear up, realizing just how much I actually needed him. I placed my hands over his, a tear rolled down my cheek. He leaned in closer to me and wrapped his arms around me. I tightly hugged him back, and for the first time in years, I truly felt at ease. Chapter 12, Suppressed Memories. Daniel's arms wrapped around me, and I relaxed against his touch. I had just noticed how our bodies fit together perfectly, obviously made for each other. I breathed in his natural scent and buried my face into his chest. For a moment, I forgot about everything. In this instant, all my problems were gone, and Daniel was the only thing I could see. It's amazing how simply being with your mate can make you feel so blissful. After a long moment of silence, Daniel finally spoke. "I'm so happy you're here with me now. But I'm really sorry about how I treated you. I was being so forceful and it wasn't right." Daniel pulled away to look at me, concern written on his face. I could tell he was really bothered by it, and I couldn't stand him feeling like this. "Don't worry. I was to blame too. If I hadn't avoided you, it would have saved both of us a lot of pain and trouble." He was silent for a while, then asked, "Lauren, why did you avoid me? Did you not want me as your mate?" He asked that question, yet I knew he was scared of the response I would give. I looked away and replied, That's not it." "Then why?" I wanted to answer his question, but I didn't think it was right to tell him about the crush Carly has on him. That's something she should decide to either say or keep to herself. "I can't say." "Why not?" Furrowing his brows, I looked down and remained silent. "Are you going out with someone else? Is that it?" His anger taking over. "Daniel, that's Sen." I tried to deny it, but before I could, he stood up suddenly and irritatedly ran his fingers through his hair. "It's that friend you hang out with, isn't it? The one you're always with." I stood up, facing the angry Daniel. I assume HE's talking about Nate, but I don't know why he would think I was going out with him. His fists were balled up and his eyes were darkening. He was making himself all angry and jealous for nothing. There was really nothing for him to worry about. A few weeks ago, I saw how friendly you two were acting in the hallway. Yet you pinned under him, and you didn't seem like you were trying to push him off until I walked in," he said distastefully. I thought back to last week, when I had eaten Nate's pizza. His mom is such a good cook. That was the best pizza I've ever had. I remember he had tackled me and blackmailed me into buying him chips, which I never bought. But that was all that happened. Did Daniel think that's what was going on? That he had pinned me down? Is that why you were glaring at me? Remembering the moment he walked in, I wanted to rip him off of you and throw him into a wall. I chuckled and quickly raised my hand to cover my smile. "What's so funny?" he asked as he narrowed his eyes at me. "I just can't believe how big of an idiot you are," I replied, smiling. He crossed his arms and glared at me. "What is that supposed to mean? I can't believe you think I would go out with that loser." His scowl disappeared and relief took over his face. "So you're not together?" "Of course not. I wouldn't be with anyone who was my mate." "To my agent extraordinaire, Marilyn Nelben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm." "To my agent extraordinaire, Marilyn Nelben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm." Clearing up his misunderstanding. "What about that kid earlier? The one you were petting looked like he was really enjoying himself when you were touching him." "Evan. He's just a sweet little boy." Daniel narrowed his eyes at me once again, and I sighed. "You don't have to get so jealous over every person I talk to," I said, placing my hands on my hips and shaking my head. He took a step closer and whispered, "I can't help it. I don't want to share you with anyone else." I looked up at him and saw that he was staring at my lips. My face heated up, my cheeks turning a dark red. I quickly backed away and asked, "See, can I go to the bathroom?" He looked disappointed, but quickly hid it and replied while pointing to a wooden door, "It's in there." I quickly turned and made my way to the door. I turned the doorknob and let myself in, closing the door behind me. I cringed at myself for using that stupid excuse. Couldn't I have thought of anything better to say? Besides, it's not like he was actually going to kiss me. I took a deep breath, then walked to the sink. I turned the knob for the cold water and splashed some water on my face. Alex was angry at me once again. Why would you avoid kissing our mate? Don't act like you don't want to. This is the first time you've talked to me in days. And it's to tell me that. I don't want you hurting him any more than you already have. You just want us to complete the mating process and seal the bond. That's not going to happen if you keep ignoring everything I say. Ironically, I ignored her after she said that. I turned the knob and dried my face. I looked at myself in the mirror, then at the huge bathtub behind us. It was spacious, like a miniature pool, and was embedded into the ground. Bathing in that must feel great. I ignored the random thought and left the bathroom. I noticed Daniel wasn't where he was when I left. When I spotted him, I began to feel nervous. He was sitting on the edge of his bed, looking up at the white ceiling. As I approached him, he looked at me. When I stood in front of him, he patted the spot next to him. I slowly sat down next to him. After a moment of silence, "Lauren, I have a question for you. I know you didn't want to talk about it earlier, but why didn't you know about your own pack? Why haven't we heard about you all this time? We know about everyone in our pack, but we've never heard about you. I was wondering about it before too, but I couldn't ask. Crap. This was something I definitely didn't want to talk about. I don't want him to know about my uncle. As my mate, who knows what he would do?" Trying to change the topic, I jokingly said, "That was more than one question." He remained serious, obviously not fucking around. I didn't want to lie, but I didn't want to tell him the truth either. I simply said, "My family just isn't very involved with the pack." It was a lie, but it was the complete truth. "Who are your parents?" he asked as he crossed his arms. My parents." I stuttered, this being a very sensitive topic for me. "Tell me their names." I looked down and, after hesitating, quietly said, "Talbot Exton and Fletcher Errington." The memory that I tried so hard to suppress and lock away came back, reminding me of the painful moment when my life came crashing down before my very own eyes. I remembered the day they left. They didn't tell me the reason. They just said they would be back in a week. I patiently waited, but after a week had passed, they never returned. I remember crying, but the real tears came when my uncle told me they died in a car accident and that I would never see them again. Since Daniel hadn't said anything, I carefully looked up, taking a peek at his face. I was surprised to see the shock in his eyes. "Your parents were Tara and Fletcher?" Daniel asked in disbelief. I nodded, then stared at him in confusion. Why was he so surprised by this? "But you're supposed to be dead. Their daughter died with them in the accident." What? What are you talking about?" Giving Daniel a look that told him he better explain what was going on. "Fletcher and Tara died in a car accident. But her brother said their daughter snuck into the back seat and went with them. That they all died together." "Her brother? Is he talking about Raphael?" "To my 18th extraordinaire, Madeleine Noban. Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm." "You're their daughter?" I nodded, and Daniel looked as if he had just been told the world was going to end tomorrow. Now it was my turn to ask questions. "How did you know my parents?" Daniel looked at me and smiled slightly. "Your parents were great. Your dad was one of our best warriors and your mom was good friends with the loon and my mom. She would take care of Jeremy, Lucius, and I whenever our parents needed to go to another pack for a meeting. She was really sweet. And she even let us have dessert without eating our vegetables." "Hey, that's not fair. She never let me do that." Daniel laughed and teased. "She just liked me better." I rolled my eyes and asked, "What else do you remember of her?" "Well, she was the nicest person ever. She was kind to everyone. She never let anyone suffer alone. And she always saw the best in everyone. Even Jeremy. when he was going through his rebellious state. That was true about her. She had the biggest heart and would even help others if it meant putting herself at risk. What about my dad? Your dad was tough. Like I said earlier, he was one of our strongest warriors. But when he would help watch over us, he would turn into a big softy. It was obvious how much he loved terror. I loved that about my dad. He was tough on the outside, but soft on the inside. He wouldn't hesitate to protect his family and his pack against any threat. But when he was around people he trusted, he was a total goofball and softy. Hearing Daniel talk about my parents made me happy. It was great to know they were remembered as good people, just as I had known they were. I remember when your mom told us the story about how she convinced her parents to adopt Raphael. He had been abandoned since he was little, and when she saw him, she brought him to her parents. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilban, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. They were just going to let him shower and give him a meal, but she convinced them that he needed a home. She really loved him as if he was her real brother. I remember she told me that story a long time ago, and I really looked up to her for it. Raphael also used to say how grateful he was to her. When he changed completely, I was kind of relieved my mom didn't have to see what he had become. He's been off the rails lately. He would yell at other pack members for no reason, and he even punched Jeremy's dad, Alpha John. He doesn't even bother attending our pack's weekly meetings anymore. And HES always drunk and violent. Daniel's face had turned into a scowl. He didn't seem to like Raphael any more than I did. Suddenly, his face went pale. He looked as if he just came to a sudden realization and looked at me. He blankly asked, "Who's been your guardian all these years?" I felt my heart sink to my stomach. I didn't want him to know. I've been able to hide it for years. So why did he figure it out in just a matter of minutes? In response to my silence, he sternly repeated himself. "Lauren, tell me he was the one who took you in after your parents died." I looked down. I couldn't deny it. He suddenly stood up with a scary expression on his face. "Has he ever laid his filthy hands on you?" he asked in a dark voice. When I didn't respond, he yelled, "Tell me, Lauren, has he ever hurt you?" I flinched. Of course he has, but I don't want Daniel doing anything reckless. I know it was stupid of me, but I decided to lie. No, he hasn't. His face softened, but he was still wary. He narrowed his eyes and asked, "Are you sure?" I nodded. I knew that I couldn't keep lying to him, but for now that was the best thing to do. I don't need either of them getting killed. Daniel plopped down onto the bed, resting his back against the soft mattress. He pulled me down so I was lying next to him, facing each other. What are you doing?" Finding myself stuttering for the 100th time today. "It's all Daniel's fault." He looked down at me and smiled. "I'm relieved he hasn't done anything to you. I don't know what I would have done if he hurt you in any way," he said while gently brushing my cheek with his thumb. "That's what I'm scared of." He pulled me closer, leaving his hands to rest on my hips. He softly said, "I won't let anyone hurt you. I promise to protect you no matter what." My heart melted at his words. Before I could tell him that was the cheesiest line ever, I felt a pair of warm lips on mine. He caught me by surprise, but my eyes quickly shut and my wolf's eagerness took over, causing me to respond to his gentle kiss. It was unlike anything I had ever felt before. I was filled with unbelievable excitement. And one other thing. Love. In that blissful moment, I realized that all the walls I had built up to protect everyone from getting hurt were quickly torn down. I was no longer able to shelter everyone from the pain that was soon to come. Chapter 13 Waffles and Tater Tots. Daniel's lips pressed against mine in a sweet kiss. The moment our lips met, I had completely lost myself. His lips were soft and warm, dangerously tempting. A comforting warmth enveloped my entire body. I raised my hand to the back of his neck where I tangled my fingers into his hair and brought his lips closer to mine. The innocence of our kiss didn't last long, as our need for each other grew, especially after being apart for so long. Our kiss had elevated to rougher, more passionate ones. He shifted next to me on the bed and abruptly broke our kiss. He quickly trapped me under him and resealed our lips in a matter of seconds. He parted my lips with his tongue, letting himself in. I softly moaned against his lips when our tongues came into contact. I felt an unknown heat surge through my body. Every inch of my body felt like it was on fire. I had a sudden urge for him. I needed to have him as close as possible. I brought my hands up and wrapped them around his neck. I pulled him down, bringing our bodies closer. At this point, I couldn't think straight anymore. I had forgotten every reason to not continue, which there were many of. My body was on fire and I couldn't fight this swelling desire within me. When we pulled away, we were both panting from the intensity of the kiss. But he didn't let that stop him. He began placing kisses on my neck. I tilted my head and closed my eyes, giving him more access. His teeth scraped across the spot on my neck reserved for his mark. I suppressed a moan from escaping, but when he kissed the area, I couldn't hold it back. My hands found the end of his shirt and slipped inside, brushing against his bare skin. And I felt his hot, quickened breath against my neck. He sat up and quickly pulled his shirt over his head, tossing it to the side. My eyes scanned his chest, his strong arms, and the six-pack on his abdomen. He was muscular, but not so much that it was scary. He was perfect. At the sight of his flawless body, I felt my desire begin to grow. He leaned back down so his body was hovering above mine. I noticed how dark his eyes were, filled with the same lust as mine. With his thumb, he gently brushed my now swollen lips, running his finger along the bottom of my lip. He leaned and I closed my eyes once again. His lips found mine and I immediately responded, kissing him back with everything I had. I loved having him so close, kissing his lips, and how perfectly our bodies fit together. Knowing he was mine and mine alone made me extremely happy. Since we had both given into our lust and our wolf's instinct to be with our mate, I was surprised when Daniel suddenly broke our kiss. I whimpered immediately once his lips left mine. He was looking towards the door, but turned his attention to me once he noticed my disappointment. He was panting slightly, attempting to regain control. He closed his eyes for a few seconds, then opened them again with his eyes back to their original sky blue color. "Someone's coming," he said before quickly climbing off the bed. The moment I sit up, the door opened and the smell of food quickly filled the room. Jeremy walked in, holding a tray of food. When he saw me, his jaw dropped. He looked from me to Daniel and back. "Why is she on your bed? And where the fuck did your shirt go?" he shouted as Daniel approached him. "Shut up. Why are you here?" Daniel grumbled, anger showing in his tone. "I came to bring you guys food. I don't know if you've realized, but you guys have been in here for quite a while. I figured it was better if I came to bring your food rather than the cook. I didn't think I would be interrupting anything." Daniel scowled but took the tray from him anyways. Jeremy smirked and teased, "If you're gonna fuck, use protection." I grabbed one of the pillows on Daniel's bed and threw it in Jeremy's direction. It almost hit him, but he quickly ran out and closed the door behind him. We heard him laugh from the other side before walking away from Daniel's room. Daniel sighed and murmured, "He's such an asshole. At least he's a funny asshole." I pointed out, now smiling, I actually thought our situation was kind of humorous. Daniel made his way towards me on the bed and placed the tray on my lap. He climbed onto the bed, sitting next to me. I looked down at the tray with 2 bowls of chicken soup, 2 glasses of lemonade, and a small plate with a few cookies. I looked at Daniel and asked, "Can we eat the cookies first?" He smiled and replied, "No, you have to eat your meal first. Dessert later. You party pooper." I complained and frowned, earning a chuckle from Daniel. I picked up one of the bowls and handed it to him, then placed the tray in between both of us so we could share it. The chicken soup looked and smelled delicious. I brought the spoon up to my mouth and smiled when it was as delicious as I thought it would be. I looked at Daniel, who also seemed to be enjoying his meal. "We let things escalate a little too quickly," I said shyly. He looked at me but quickly looked away, rubbing the back of his neck awkwardly. I don't know what came over me. He apologized. Same goes for me. Can't say I hated it. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Mumbling the last part, he grinned and turned to me. I didn't hate it either. Quite the opposite. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. He said with a smirk. I found his boyish smile incredibly adorable. His smile was contagious, causing me to smile as well. As we continued our meal, he asked me, so it's your favorite food? That's a hard one, but I'd have to say waffles. He looked at me and tilted his head to the side, looking so confused. I know waffles are usually for breakfast, but they're just so good, especially with whipped cream and strawberry syrup. I explained myself. He shook his head, but smiled. And yours? He replied, that's easy. Tater tots. What? Those things are weird. I know they are. That's why I love them so much. They're also really good. I think your favorite food is weirder than mine. They might look unusual, and I know their name is weird, but they're delicious. Whatever you say. Danny. He looked at me and raised an eyebrow. Danny. Seriously. I replied. Shut up. I can do what I want. And what I want is to make fun of you by calling you Danny. He smiled and said, okay, but I get to give you a nickname too. No way. It's decided. Now I just have to get you to try tater tots. I'm not having those things. Of course you are. You'll love them. We'll see about that. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Putting my bowl down on the tray, I smiled childishly and reached for the plate of cookies. I picked one up and enjoyed the sweetness of it after my first bite. Daniel set down his bowl as well and got one for himself. After I finished my first cookie, I happily asked, these are really good. Who makes them? Nuna Madeline does. She's really good at baking. Daniel replied, watching as I reached for another cookie. Jeremy S. Mom. Yep, he answered. So when will he become alpha? After he finds his mate, which could be on his birthday. It's next week on Friday. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. That soon. Yeah. Unless he doesn't find his mate. If it's been a whole year and he still hasn't found her, he becomes alpha without his Luna. I nodded and picked up the last chocolate chip cookie. I was about to take a bite, but remembered Daniel hadn't really gotten any. I looked at him, and he said, you can eat it, but I got more than you. You can have it. Daniel was too nice. There be no way I was just gonna sit here and feel fat eating the last cookie. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. I broke it in half and offered him one of the pieces. He timidly extended his hand and took it from me. You could have just eaten it all. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. He said, smiling. After we finished, he set the tray aside and lay it on his back. He signaled to the spot next to him on the bed, inviting me next to him. I scooted closer and lay my head on his chest. One of his hands wrapped around my waist while the other played with my hair. It's funny how just a few hours ago, I was trying so hard to avoid him. An idea that now seemed ridiculous. Everything felt like a dream, yet it was unmistakably real. In just a few hours, I feel like I've become inseparable from this person. I've never felt so complete and so serene. These feelings gave me hope for the future and for us. He transformed my whole life without me even realizing it. And in only a matter of hours, I smiled and closed my eyes as I wrapped an arm around him. Can I take a nap? I'm really comfortable right now, and my eyes feel heavy. He kissed my forehead and replied, "To my agent extraordinaire, Mylen Nelben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm." He pulled a cover over us, and I snuggled into his side. I closed my eyes once again and let the comfort of his scent drive me to a peaceful sleep. Chapter 14 Scent. I shuffled under the covers, pulling them over me as I moved closer to the warmth next to me. It had an enchanting scent whose touch was comforting, with an arm wrapped around my waist. My eyes shot open. The first thing I saw was my shirtless mate, who I had chosen to stay away from but failed. His eyes were closed, his face wearing a peaceful expression. His messy hair partially covered his eyes, and his long, dark eyelashes were angled downward. His lips were partially parted, reminding me of the kiss we shared earlier. A sudden embarrassment made me feel bashful, creeping onto my face and tinting my cheeks. The longer I stared, the more I felt like a creep, so I decided to head to the bathroom. When I attempted to move, a pair of arms grabbed at my waist and pulled me back into bed. Daniel pressed his chest against my back and held me tighter. I turned to face him and noticed his eyes were now open, a smile playing on his lips. "Come on, we don't have to get up," he purred as he snuggled closer to me. "I was just going to the bathroom," I replied, trying not to think about how sexy his voice sounded just now. He gently brushed my cheek with the back of his hand. "You can go later, if I shit on your bed. I'm not cleaning it up," I remarked playfully. He let out a loud laugh, the corners of his eyes wrinkling slightly as he smiled. This guy even had a sexy laugh. Why was he so perfect? "Well, I guess I shouldn't be complaining," he whispered against my ear. "If you did that, I would be very turned on." I quickly looked at him, wrinkling my eyebrows together in disgust. He laughed once again, and I realized that he was thankfully joking. "You should have seen the look on your face," he said before falling into a pit of laughter. I rolled my eyes and untangled his arms from around my waist, pushing myself off the bed. A WW, he sat up on the bed. "Come back, Lauren." I shook my head at him and asked, "What time is it?" He reached for his phone on the nightstand and answered, "It'll be midnight in 15 minutes. To my agent extraordinaire, Mylen Nelbe, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm." I asked in surprise. "Crap, I should probably get going. It's pretty late," I said and began looking around the room, searching for my phone. He quickly got up and walked over to me. He placed his hands on my shoulders and dejectedly asked, "You're not gonna stay?" His eyes had a sadness to them, pleading me not to leave. My wolf whimpered, and I immediately felt the pressure to stay. "But I need to shower." And what a boo I started. But Daniel interrupted. He quickly said, "You can just shower here. It'll give you a change of clothes and you can sleep on my bed. But won't I be imposing?" "Not at all. Lauren, I want you to stay with me," causing me to look away nervously. I don't know if staying is a good idea or not, but I do know I shouldn't to home to Raphael. Besides, it's not like I don't want to stay. I guess it's fine. His blue eyes lit up, gleaming with joy. He happily kissed my cheek and smiled. "You wanted to shower, right?" Giving me no time to react to his kiss, I nodded, and he walked over to a door I hadn't noticed before, despite it being in plain sight. It was a smaller door near the bathroom. He disappeared for a few seconds before returning with neatly folded clothes in his hand, a navy blue tee, shirt and something that was in a package. "What's that?" I pointed to the package on top of the shirt. He looked away and awkwardly rubbed his neck with his free hand. "A pair of boxers. I don't have any female underwear, so this LL have to do all. They're new, so you don't have to worry." He quickly added, "Do you normally have new packaged underwear just lying in your closet?" "No, but my mom bought them for me recently and I still haven't used them." I chuckled and teased, "Your mom still buys your underwear?" He smiled awkwardly and looked down, which I found extremely adorable. I laughed, not like there's anything wrong with it. Well, to some extent. Hey, he said, obviously offended. It's not like I want her to. Yeah, I guess it. I'm going to go take a bath now. As I opened the door to the bathroom, "Kiwe agent extraordinaire, Marlene Noben. Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm." But what would I do while you're gone? I turned and replied, "Count how much hair you have on your head. You sure you don't want me to wash your hair? Or watch you take a bath?" He asked with a grin. "Nope." I replied and closed the door behind me, making sure to lock it just in case. After an approximately 30-minute bath, I quickly dry off and slid into the pair of boxers that he had given me, which, by the way, are airy and comfortable. I then pulled the baggy shirt over my head and looked down to see it reach just below my thighs. Isn't this a little too short? Walking out like this is a bit embarrassing. He is my mate, but that's the reason I should be worried. I pull down the shirt as low as I possibly can and open the door, letting some of the humidity from the bathroom escape before closing the door. I see Daniel come out from his closet, now with a shirt on and sweatpants. When he saw me, I noticed his eyes scanning my body, which made me kind of nervous. He began to slowly make his way to me, and by the time he finally reached me, I was a complete ball of nerves. He brushed my damp hair back before pulling me into a hug. I heard him inhale softly, then sigh in relief. My breath caught when I felt his lips press against the base of my neck. "You smell like me. It's making my wolf and I shamefully excited," he whispered against my skin. His words and tone made me jump. I gently pushed him away and nervously suggested, "We should go to sleep. It's pretty late." He looked at me but quickly looked away with a blush creeping up his face, as if just realizing what he had done. I acted impulsively. He apologized. "To my agent extraordinaire, Marlene Noben. Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm." I smiled and placed a hand on his arm. "Let's just go to bed." I heard loud footsteps approaching quickly, but I paid no mind to it and snuggled into the pillow next to me. When the footsteps finally stopped, I thanked the moon goddess for the peace and quiet. The door suddenly burst open and girly screams were heard. My pillow suddenly sprang up, causing me to do so as well. I opened my heavy eyes to see that my pillow was actually Daniel, and that the source of the girly screams were Jeremy and Lucas with "No guns, no." I heard Daniel shout before he suddenly jumped in front of me and repeatedly got attacked with no-gun bullets. "What the hell is going on?" I asked as Jeremy and Lucas fired at Daniel. Daniel yelled, "Crap, I forgot it was Wednesday." "What? Does this normally happen every Wednesday?" When they stopped firing, Daniel quickly got up and pulled the no guns from under the bed. He tossed one to me, who barely caught it. "Don't let them take your gun. Defend yourself," he shouted before shooting at Jeremy, who had now split from Lucas. Where did Lucas go? I looked around the room and he was nowhere to be seen. Daniel had already chased Jeremy out of his room, but I could hear their guns and manly screams nearby. I quietly got up, scanning my surroundings. I felt a hand grab my foot, and next thing I knew I was lying on the floor with the wind knocked out of me. I saw Lucas kneeling down next to me with his gun pointed at me. "I'm really sorry. Did that hurt?" he asked with concern. "Don't worry. I'm fine." "Oh, so gentle and caring. That's good." He pointed to my gun. "Anyways, I'm going to be taking this." As he reached for it, I quickly fired at him. He moved backwards and I quickly got up and ran into the bathroom. I closed the door, looked around for a place to hide. I looked to the shower, but that was a bit obvious. However, I could use it as a distraction. I closed the curtain and quickly looked around. There was a cabinet under the sink that I could probably fit into. The bathroom was a good move. "Now you're cornered in there," I heard Lucas say from right outside the door. I quickly crawled into the cabinet. It was a pretty tight space, but I managed to fit. I heard the door open slowly, then his footsteps as he carefully looked around. As I expected, he went for the most obvious spot first. The shower curtain opened, so I quickly jumped out and knocked him down. Although I fell to, I was quick to snatch his nerf gun from him. Yes. I cheered excitedly. He sat up and with a smile said, Yeah, I guess you did. Congrats. He put his hand up, which confused me. Did he want his gun back or something? After a few seconds, he awkwardly said, you're supposed to high-five me, oh. That makes sense. I raised my hand and smacked his in a loud high-five. Daniel walked in with a smile on his face and raised two guns into the air. I got him. While his mom scolded him, I took the opportunity to snatch his gun. Jeremy stormed in and argued. You cheated. My mom was talking to me so it didn't count. All's fair in me Wednesday, Daniel said with an adorable smirk. And just what's the point in you guys fighting each other with toy guns every Wednesday? I finally asked. The last person to have their guns stole and doesn't have to go to the grocery store with mom in the afternoon. Having the opportunity to miss out is truly a grand privilege, Jeremy said. Wait, then why was I involved? I bet they figured you'd be a burden for me and thought they could use it to their advantage. Boy, were they wrong. Daniel answered my question and looked at me proudly. He made his way over to me and offered me a hand, making me realize I was still on the floor. I took his hand and he pulled me up into his chest. As I enjoyed his calming scent, he gently ran his fingers through my hair. We're right here, you know. Anyways, you guys better hurry up or we'll be late for school. See you in a few minutes. Jeremy interrupted us, then left along with Lucas. I forgot we had school today. I really don't want to go. I complained. I know. I would much rather stay here with you. He whispered into my ear, sending shivers down my back. He took a step back and said, I'm going to take a shower, but feel free to take anything from my closet. Without saying another word, he pulled his shirt over his head and tossed it aside. He started to remove his sweatpants, but before he could finish I quickly turned around. You could at least warn me next time. You know, so there's going to be a next time. And I could sense his smirk without looking at him. That's not what I meant. I shouted before quickly leaving the bathroom. I heard him laugh before I closed the door. I made my way to his closet and looked for clothes that wouldn't raise too much suspicion. That being said, I couldn't wear something that was known to be his or something that looks too much like it belongs to a guy. I looked around and found a sweater that was too large and was something he probably didn't wear too often. I didn't think any of his jeans were going to fit me. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. So I just put on the same ones I had yesterday. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. I quickly took off his shirt and put on his sweater. It was really comfortable, and it smelled nice too. When I left the closet, he was already standing outside, drying his hair with a towel. That was fast. You were only in there for 6 minutes. Would have been faster if you came in and helped me wash my back. I rolled my eyes and he smiled. Anyways, I should hurry downstairs and make breakfast. Come down when you're ready, he stated as he left the room. You know how to cook? Of course I do. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. He shouted from the hallway.